I think it's bringing us closer to what I was said I was going to share with us. I had a long chat with my brother-in-law yesterday. I mean, I really enjoyed this session we had. I really, really enjoyed it. And I thank God that God confirmed what I was sharing with him yesterday again this morning about fear. The one thing I learned from this quiet time is that fear also creates illusions. Fear will aggravate nothing. It's not there, but fear creates it. And so when fear gets to that kind of a point, we begin to see ourselves in a negative situation, in a fearful situation. At times, we misbehave. And it's all because of fear, which is illegitimate fear. Now, I love one thing the man said this morning. He said we should not have the illusion of the fact that there is no fear, but there is something we should get. Let me read this to you because it's good to share so that we can understand. At times when people do things, you begin to wonder why they're doing it or what is going through their mind. He said something like this. He said, it would be wrong to suggest that all fear is baseless, but sometimes it is. I have written before of Brocken, which is the highest point of the Harz mountain in Germany. For years, it was a place of dread because it was thought that a giant lived on its summit. Credible witnesses solemnly swore that they had seen him. Therefore, some scientists decided to investigate. And this is what they found. The witnesses had seen the giant only at sunrise or sunset. That is, when the sun's rays were horizontal. And I know if you know very well, if you stand in the sun, if the sun is upon your head, you are short. If the sun started moving side, the more it moves sideways, the taller you become to get on the floor. Your shadow becomes longer. So they found out that thing only happens, they see that giant only in the morning or in the evening. That is when the sun is not overhead anymore. Right. Okay, listen to this. He said, they found also that this giant only appears where the broken mountain was free of cloud, where there is no cloud. In other words, the sun could shine through, right? And when the neighboring mountains were covered with mist. So they guessed the truth at once. The ghostly specter people saw was nothing more than a shadow, a magnified and distorted image of themselves. Did you see that? They trembled at their own reflection. In other words, when they're on the top of that mountain, because there is mist there, that becomes like a screen. So your shadow is showing on that screen. So they are seeing the giant. It was their own shadow that they were seeing. That is how fear works. Some of our fears are like that. They are distortions of reality. Hold on to that point. It will serve you well when next you feel fear arise in your heart. And he prayed this prayer this morning, and I was almost full of laughter. He said, Father, help me to have the same attitude to life as the person who said, fear knocked at the door. Faith opened it. And lo, there was no one there. You get the message? Fear knocked the door. So the guy will be afraid to go, who's there? So if you don't have faith, you will stay in that fear, you'll be dribbling, who is there? Who is knocking the door? Fear knocked the door. You know what? You go and open it by faith. Faith got up, opened the door, and there was nobody there. I remembered our brother was giving us that message some few weeks ago that fear, what is fear? He says, is false evidence appearing real. Now, why did I say I'm going to share this with us today? I said I'm going to share this with us because most of the time, our mind plays game on us. It exaggerates your problem. In fact, the one that probably is just a thing that you can just do in a flip of a hand, it becomes massive. Because let me tell you what Paul put it this way. He prayed for when he was talking to the Corinthians. He said he told the Corinthians we have a power. Let me tell you what the power he says we have. Listen to this. He says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, I'm going to read verses 4 and 5. And I'll show you where fear works there and where the power we have pulls it down. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. In other words, they are not flesh, they are not physical, but mighty through God. The weapon we have, the power we have, is mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. That is 2 Corinthians chapter 10, and I've just read verse 4. Let me read it again to you. 2 Corinthians 10, verse 4. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, in other words, fleshly, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations. Imaginations are brought about by fear. And that fear creates, so that imagination now creates an illusion that becomes real. Let me tell you something. Okay, let me give you one of my experiences. I think it's better. Let me share experience with you. In 1992, we had, before that time, we bought our house in 1989. Yeah, 89. And suddenly, a year after that, 1990, the pound became so powerful and so strong that interest rates went up to 15%. People don't believe that we have had interest rates of 15% on mortgages before in this country. So a 600 pounds mortgage at that time, and we were paying over 1,000. So it got to a point, I just said, Lord, no, we can't handle this anymore. So what should we do? I don't know how God gave us the wisdom. So I just decided, okay, you know what, let's go and buy another one and drop the key for these people, let them go and take their mortgage. So as usual, we applied for a mortgage, got a new house in Arrow Close, cheaper than the one we bought before, and very, very much gracious and so on and so forth. And then we dropped the key. The people decided to come and repossess their house. Now, because I am in finance and I have consumer credit license, suddenly I started feeling afraid that maybe because we have moved and I didn't pay that mortgage and I have moved, it will affect my consumer credit license. So that means I won't be able to work in finance. Believe it, brethren, it was dreadful. I mean, sweaty. And then this thing was not a one-day thing. For about a month and a half to 2 months, I was afraid. In fact, when clients call me or going to phone me for advice, I actually don't even answer. That is how afraid I said, because what if I answer and then they go and find the financial people find out that my credit is bad. So that means my license is gone. So that means I'm operating without license. And already I have seen myself that I don't have license anymore. Listen to this. I honestly speaking, as far as I'm concerned, as at that time, I don't have consumer credit license anymore, so I can't work. Then after about 2 months, I just prayed to God and I started thinking, I said, God, what do I do now? And suddenly that day, the quiet time said, face your fears. On that day, the quiet time said, face your fears. And it was so strong, it was so, I mean, this passage came up that the weapon you have casts down imagination and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and takes captive all thoughts to the obedience of Christ. And I said, so what do I do now? Suddenly, as if right there beside me, the Spirit just said, get up, take your car and drive to Office of Fair Trading and go and check your license. I just said, me, take car, drive from here to London to go and check my license. No. Honestly, I was sweaty and shaky. And somebody just said, just go. Okay. I went up in fear. I'm telling you this. I literally dove there like a dead man walking. As if to say, you know what you say? I'm going there to go and receive my sentence of death. So I wasn't going there with boldness. I wasn't going there with confidence. No. I was going there with dread. Honestly speaking. When we got to, at that time, it used to be in Middlesex there. So when we got to Middlesex, I parked. Everything I was doing at those moments, brethren, I was unconscious. In other words, the fear has so gripped me that I was like dead man walking. So everything, let me just go. And then when I parked, I said, I said, get out of the car. I got out. And then I walked to the place. I looked at Hope and I said, I don't want to go and ask this thing. Should I come back? I said, go going. I'm telling you the truth. I mean, this is not a 2 minutes thing. To drive from Luton, to go to Office of Fair Trading, to get down, to get a parking. I'm talking of hours now. Hours of dread. Then I got there. I said, well, you know, like somebody who is begging. You know, what's coming? I wanted to check my consumer credit license. Whether it's a and he said, oh, that's okay. You can take a seat. You like some coffee? And I'm taking coffee. Look at this guy. I give him coffee. I said, I want to know whether I'm dead or not. Asking for coffee. I said, no, thank you. Said, no, you can pick a coffee there. I said, so how's things? He said, no, sit down, we're going to take a look at this really. And this lady went in and came out in 3 minutes and gave me my license that my license is good. Do you see how they're looking at me like this? That is exactly how I looked. Honestly. He said, no, your license is fine. In fact, your credit, your something is good. I said, can I have a copy? Can I get a copy? That's what I'm going to print for you. She printed the copy and gave it to her. On the spot, at that moment, on that spot, I said, God, I'm sorry. Honestly, I said, Lord, I am sorry. This must not happen again. That is how fear works. 3 months of imagination. 3 months of illusion. That was destroyed in 3 minutes. Fear knocked at the door. Faith opens the door, and there was no one there. Why am I sharing it with? Let me tell you why I'm sharing it with us today. Now, that area now shows the experience about my own in terms of business area, right? In terms of relationship, you can begin to assume, not going to help me. Like, she's dreadful. Oh, she will never change. Oh, no. The fact is this, it is you who is creating that illusion yourself through fear. So how do we arrest it? The weapons of our warfare are not carnal. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. But mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. What does it do? It casts down imagination. So what is that weapon? That's what I wanted to ask you today. But I got yes. So what is that weapon? Yes? Does anybody have any idea of what that weapon is? That is not the weapon that is not carnal, but mighty through God. What is that weapon? It's prayer. Prayer. Just tell God, God, this is how I feel. What do I do? Finish. You see, many people will think, oh, it will be a psychological issue. There should be a kind of a formula. There should be a kind of stuff. No, just tell God. If it is true, let me see. If it is not true, take it off. That is why it says, look at the last verse of that. It says, it brings every thought to captivity, to the obedience of Christ Jesus. You tell Jesus. That is what you do. Lord, I don't know what to do at this point. I'm afraid. But you know what? Give me the courage. Tell me what to do. When I get there, take control. Jesus Christ told his disciples, he says, when they take you before the court, the magistrate, he said, don't think about what you're going to say. He said, at that moment, I will give you a mouth and wisdom. In other words, don't even calculate. Don't pre-plan. Because most of the time when we pre-plan at our own peril. Why? Because we will pre-plan based on our imagination of the level or the magnitude of that fear or that occasion. And by the time we put that together, our action that we will have taken will be wrong. It spoils things further. Do you know? I told the client. He says I submitted his application and everything, and what they require just his portfolio paper and the latest. Listen to this: the latest bank statement. And the guy went and asked him to get me his latest bank statement. We're in July, isn't it? Right. The bank statement for July is not ready yet because July is not finished. Correct? So that means his bank statement will be up to June. Correct? This man brought me bank statement from January. From January to June. 6. And I said, why? No, it's just one. He said, no, Mr. Larry, in case they ask for more. I said, no. They did not ask you for more. They said 1. And he said, just keep it in case they said, listen, they didn't ask me for that. And actually, it has happened to us before. Even we, as brokers or whatever, they tell you to bring something, you can put extra. They actually told us, just stop sending more. Just give us what we're asking. Because you could bring more, and that more would have affected, maybe had the kind of a comma in the previous one, but the current one doesn't have. And by the time they see that comma, it is their duty to investigate the comma. So who created the problem? You. Out of what? Fear. Let me give them those two so that they will know that I am genuine. It's not your business. They say, give me one. Finish. And that is how we live, brethren. And Christians will do that too. We overestimate, we over-assess things. We think we are being calculated, but actually the underlying secret is fear. It is fear that we need to get rid of. It is fear. The man asked a question today. He says, what was the Israelites' perception of Goliath? And what was David's perception of Goliath? In other words, who did the Israelites see? Who did David see? Israelites saw giants. David see an ordinary man that doesn't have power over God. Am I right? You know what? Because let me read to you what David said. Let me read what David said. 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel 17. First Samuel chapter 17, 1 Samuel 17, that is after Ruth's First Samuel chapter 17. And I'm going to read just verses 45 and 46. I'll wait for you. I'll wait for you to find it. First Samuel chapter 17, verses 45 and 46. Listen to this. In fact, let's take it from verse 44. That's better. You see, because the Israelites were seeing giants. So Goliath thought he's a giant. That is why Goliath said, and the Philistines said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. Because the guy is so tall, he's a giant. David is just a tiny guy, and he can usually beat like a pug. Look at what David said. Then David said to the Philistine, you came to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Look at verse 46. Can you imagine, compare the height of this person and the height of this person who's talking? He says, and today I will deliver you. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will smite you and take your head off from you. And I will give your carcasses to the host of the Philistines this day, and to the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, so that all will know that there is a God in Israel. Verse 47, and all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, but the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. How did David get to that point? How did David get to that perception? That is what we're talking about. When we look at these things, our imagination, our fear creates imaginations and illusions that is beyond what we think we can't handle it anymore. Brethren, let me give you that confidence today. When I read that passage today, in that quiet time today, I said I have to share with all my brethren. Don't be afraid. Oh, and maybe when I talk to that person, then he will not listen anymore. Oh, I'm sure this person is not going to help me. Who told you that he's going to help you or he's not going to tell you? If God says he has to do it, he will run extra mile. Yes or no? Huh? If I ask him, he won't do it. How did you know he won't do it? Are you God? What if I say, God, you know what? I'm afraid. I have a feeling that he will not do it. But you know what? If it is your will, let him do it. You go there and ask. The guy will go extra mile. That is why what affects our peace. We live in fear. Day by day, we live in fear. That is why I'm sorry for those who don't have God. I'm sorry for those who don't have God. I always ask myself, why am I not living in Gaza? Why is it that United Kingdom is an island? Right? All the other islands, they are always full of hurricane and earthquake, everything. Why doesn't it hit United Kingdom? Somebody asked me yesterday, he said, Uncle, why did you come to UK? I mean, you have to know your brother is in Canada, and then my brother-in-law is in Canada. I said, why did you come to UK? Yeah. You remember the reply I gave him? I said, me? I don't know. I just thought that we should leave. And my wife and myself, we went and prayed and said, Lord, show us where to go. And God brought us to the United Kingdom. And here we are. It is recently that they are not shouting of knife. In UK before, you hardly get knife. It was so peaceful. Meanwhile, in America, gun is part of your tool in the day. It's like having the spoon and fork and knife in your home. Yeah, gun is there. It's like fork and knife in your house. I say, yeah, you're two. Before you argue with anybody, boom, you're gone. I said, God, thank you. I'm not in America. I love it. And that is the truth, brethren. The Lord brought us to the United Kingdom. Why? Geographically, what is the way? I mean, that is why we need to be praying for Britain. Especially these people that are compromising and undermining the glory of God. The Lord put that island in a strategic place. That hurricane, how many hurricanes have you got in England? After all, since we have it here, we had one in 1987. And then probably had one about some few years ago. In fact, about 1 or 2 years ago since then. Even earthquake, you hardly hear about earthquake. And I'm thinking, wow, Lord, how do you lose this island? It is God. Because you asked and God directed your path. The steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. And God delights in his ways. If you remember that, you stop being afraid. Yeah, you will stop being afraid. Brethren, what this I'm telling you today is the key to a peaceful Christian life. Lord, I'm going out today. I don't know what it's going to do. In fact, some of the things I'm doing, I'm worried about it. But you know what? When I get there, just do what you want to do. That's all. Honestly. And it helps me because people always wonder, at times when I tell people that I get hardly disappointed when it comes to business. I don't get disappointed. And they say, why? I said, because before the business, I said, Lord, if this business is your will, let it go out. Let it work. If not, let it fail. And at times when it fails, I tell God, thank you. And people are telling me, and you are praising God at the business. I said, yes. What if the business has put me in trouble? I mean, I can't see beyond my nose, can I? You can't see beyond your nose, can you? So if it fails, why should you be disappointed? God is saving you. I mean, there's a proverb. There's a proverb they do in Africa. They said we try to save a chicken. from going into dangerous areas. He says, "Oh, they are disturbing me. They didn't give me free movement." If they give you free movement, you are dead. So they put you in a cage where you are safe. And brethren, that is the weapon that Satan uses. Satan uses fear. He uses fear to trap us. And unfortunately, when we not get that fear, we don't stop at fear. We now start building castles and skyscrapers of illusion that weighs us so down that we are almost becoming flat. Let's get rid of it. Trust God. Trust God and we sort you out. Praise the Lord.